let me go ahead and explain to you now how we did the formats, and then you'll be able to B-roll some of this stuff.
Yeah.
We would have booking meetings once a week. We would fly to some fucking place or whatever, Detroit or wherever, that Herd would get together with us while we were all on the, because me and Flair and Kevin were on the road. Jim Ross was on the road for TVs, but for house shows, he was back at the office. And everybody else, Barnett and all those guys, were in the office. So they would go on the road and we would meet at a airport hotel or get a boardroom or something somewhere. And absolutely nothing of the booking was actually done in the booking meetings. Because Herd would grump and argue and grouse at Rick or at me or at whoever and talk about what he wanted to have done or do or whatever. And then we'd all leave, and then Rick would sit with me and Kevin in the car or on the way to the airport or before the show or whatever and say, okay, I want to work with so-and-so. Sean, you work a program with Anthony. This would be a great angle. We'll do this. Boom, boom, boom. He'd give us the high spots, and some main event matches to put on television that he had in his head. And then he'd tell me and Kevin, okay, go fill it in. So then I would sit down sometimes in a room late at night, or if I ever was home, with the talent roster and all the paperwork, because look how I am. And I would do formats. And I would make sure that everybody was represented in some kind of way and that all the things that we needed to do were involved somehow. And then I'd write them out by hand, and then I would show them to Kevin. And Kevin would say, well, Jimmy, you got a good maintenance show there. I can't do Boston. But it needs a little oomph there, or you need to put this. So he would give me a couple of ways to dress up just a flat job match, or he'd give me a little thing to do where somebody would be involved or whatever that would juice it up a little bit and add a little something to that hour. And he would tell me at the same time why he was doing that, and so he was teaching me. So then I'd go and I'd put that down, and I'd redo the shows, and then I'd send them in by the fax machine to Janie Engel at the office. And she'd type them up, which is then what you see here. Then Herd would see them, and Herd would get mad, and he'd take out all the live interviews, and he'd put in 30-second pre-tapes. Then we'd go, because he didn't like live interviews, because that's the only wrestling show he'd ever seen was the one that he worked on in St. Louis when he was a director in the 60s, and that's one thing Sam Muchnick didn't do was very many interviews. So he didn't think, he thought well, goddamn, we need a good wrestling bout to keep the people's attention. If Ric Flair is doing a live interview in the ring with fucking Woman, and JR's holding the microphone, and Flair's doing his thing, and the fans are going crazy, that's bad. But if we have a wrestling match involving the fucking New Zealand militia, well, that'll keep the fans' attention. So he'd take all the live interviews out and put in 30-second pre-tapes instead. Then we would go to the show, and we'd have the production meeting at the taping, and as Rick would look at the formats, he'd say, is this what we had? And then I'd get out my originals, and I'd say, no, Rick, who changed it? Well, actually, Herd would tell Jim Ross, because he was in the office, to change it. That's where JR got on sideways with Flair, because it would be JR changed it. So Rick would have me change it back, and then we'd do what we originally planned most of the time if we caught it, and then Herd would go ballistic again. But anyway, so you got the list of pre-tapes at the start. I would write those out, and they'd be typed out. Then this is the order of live events, and for the show and the date that it ordered, and then this is the format. And the preparation on the right-hand side, here's all the plugs. Tonight, at the Oak City Fairgrounds Coliseum, Buzz Sawyer and Dr. Death. Tomorrow night, Dallas. This Tuesday night, The Clash, Texas Shootout, starting time 8:05 Eastern. This Friday night, Gordon Soley and Jim Ross for the Power Hour, Funk's Grill, the Royal Families, all the bullet points. I would sit down with JR as the color guy, and we'd go through all of that and make sure that we knew what we were wanting to do and wanting to plug.